Welcome to Happy Path Programming. I'm Bruce Eckel.
I'm James Ward. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Hi, Ollie. It's great to have you on our podcast today, Happy Path Programming. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. That's a pleasure.
So fun. So, for those that don't know Ollie, I met her first because she was creating some amazing Scala Zio content and helping me learn some Scala Zio stuff. And so that was, I think, my first interaction with you. But over the last couple of years, now I've been able to get to know you a lot better, and so yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you on and get to chat about some fun stuff. We've got a couple ideas for topics, but as usual, we'll just see where this goes. So, but maybe you should start with just a little bit of introduction about yourself, and so our listeners can get to know you.
Yeah, so I'm Ollie. I'm a Scala developer in the past, and right now I started my own business around online conferences, so I'm organizing them. I'm a big fan of functional programming. I really love that approach, and at some point I think I looked at Zio and I was like, wow, this wonderful idea. But then since I started to move away from day-by-day development, I kind of lost my expertise in that, so I wouldn't count myself as an expert in that. But apart from that, I love recursion schemes. That's really my topic. So I've done a few talks about that, including one keynote with Bartosz Milewski. And why I mentioned that,
That's awesome.
Actually, I have a new microphone here and new headset, which came to me from that conference where we gave a keynote. And I hope you like the sound, because
It sounds great.
Yeah.
So that was actually one thing we were going to ask you about. Is I haven't watched it yet, but I saw that you did a talk at a Scala conference. Which Scala conference was the Recursion Schemes one at?
So there were two conferences actually, and there are two parts of the talk, and we will create the third one. The first one was at that was actually my first online conference ever, because before I participated in online meetups, and the online conferences didn't actually exist in such a volume as they are now. And that was Scala UA, Ukrainian edition.
Oh, cool.
And I hoped to travel there, but unfortunately we couldn't because of the lockdown and etc. So that was about algebras and catamorphisms. And the next one we did almost a year later at Functional Scala Conference. That was about co-algebras and anamorphisms.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
And so that one was the one which was titled Recursion Schemes or something like that, or was that a different one?
Yeah, Recursion Schemes categorically, and another one, Growing Tree from a Seed.
Okay, nice. That's great.
Yeah.
So give us a little bit of background on what that talk is about, and the Recursion Schemes one. And because I haven't watched it yet. The Cliff
So
Notes.
the idea is simple. It's just an introduction to the recursion schemes approach. So the entire problem that the recursion scheme is trying to solve is to separate how you traverse, how you recurse through this data structure, and how you actually operate on that. So, for example, when you do sorting algorithm, it usually you iterate through the structure, you split it, and how's that called? Something and conquer, divide and conquer, right?
Okay.
And it's like recursive algorithms. And you do something, for example, comparison of two elements, but on top of that, you also do the iteration. So the idea is that you can once write that recursion part, and then have the actual function separately. So when you look at the code, if you're familiar with the approach, you will immediately know what's going on without digging into the details of the recursion. So it's separate.
Okay.
So is that like, I mean, like when you do recursion now, you have to go, oh, in order for tail recursion to work, I have to make the recursive call exactly right. And are you trying to abstract away from that so that I don't have to? Oh,
In a way, it's like a visitor pattern where you separate when you visit a node and what you actually do with that, right? Does make sense?
Interesting. Yeah. So are people using this separation now, or is this more like on the
Fantastic
conceptual?
question. It's conceptual. I wouldn't recommend to repeat that at home if you don't know what you're doing. I usually don't know what I'm doing, but yet I use
None
that
of
in
us do.
production. Yeah, I used that in production a few times while I was working as a consultant at 47 Degrees, and there were different like usually it comes with like you're building a DSL, domain specific language, and you need to parse what's going on, what your data scientist, for example, wrote on this subset of Scala or on another language, and you're trying to go recursively through the code and then execute something. For example, the often people are writing calculator
Okay.
when it comes to recursion schemes, and they're trying, okay, this plus sign in the code is actually plus. Then you go into that like deeper in the equation, and you see, okay, this divide mark like slash means divide, etc., etc. So you translate from one language to another, and you don't have to think at this moment about like how to go deeper into the equation. You're thinking only about how to translate the slash to divide and plus to
Yeah, I guess your analogy to the visitor pattern makes sense, because usually in that kind of pattern we couple together the recursion, or how to proceed, with the actual parsing and decision making for what to do. And what you're saying is like separate out the recursive side of it from the decision making side of it, or
Yeah.
something.
I would think a better analogy might be iterator, because that allows you to move through a collection without knowing the underlying structure of the collection. And it seems like that's sort of what you're trying to do here. You're trying to implement something that happens to use recursion, but that's not front and center like it is normally.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's probably also good, like iteration. Yeah, I haven't thought about that, because usually people use like visitor pattern, and I fully agree with that, but iteration sounds, but there is a difference, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but visitor is designed for if you have a frozen hierarchy and you want to add functionality to it. So it's like, I don't know. I often find visitor is maybe misunderstood that way.
yeah.
Maybe.
Anyway.
So this sounds like you've discovered a better way to do recursive stuff. Is this something where like the discovery happens, some experimentation happens, some like maybe libraries start to adopt this approach, and then do you foresee a future where this idea changes Scala or other programming languages to like better create a better way for developers to actually code in this way?
So the fact is that this approach started to being popularized by Eric Mayer with his paper bananas wired something.
Okay.
I,
Yeah,
for,
I
I
haven't
forgot
read that
that.
one
It's
yet.
interesting. So
Huh.
it's pretty like once you start to read it, it's hard, but then you grasp the idea and understand all of these barbed wire symbols and everything. So you start to grasp that idea. But I don't think that everyday developer would use it, and that would change like Scala a lot, because same with macros, the library authors would use that for their advantage, and it's a great technique. But for everyday programming, who's writing like create, update, delete kind of
Yeah.
applications, it's not really something that they would look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So
So there
in
are libraries like Drosty and Matryoshka, which allows you to use that um, catamorphism, anamorphism, and whatever morphisms, like weird
yeah.
names. Uh,
So since you've done a talk or a related talk about this with Bartov, is that right? How you say
Bartosz.
his name? Yeah, Bartosz. Uh, it sounds like there's some category theory
Yeah, of
underpinnings
course, of
of here
course,
too.
of
Do you want to
course.
tell us, blow our minds with the category theory ideas underneath this?
So the idea is simple. Um, Everything in category theory is simple, actually, but you have to spend your time on that. So there are basically diagrams which allows you to understand why a certain kata or ana works. So you can write a diagram going from like a one factorial to another, mapping over them and build morphisms, and then if the diagram computes, which means that you can basically
Swap.
go swap, then basically with a pen and pencil you can draw that diagram and figure out the entire recursion schemes, where they come from, just
Huh.
based on identity and
Wow.
commuting diagram. So
Yeah.
it's, and in both of these talks, we're drawing diagrams like that, like understanding of the actual formula of the function.
Yeah. Yeah. So given if you do recursion in this way and you abide by certain algebraic laws or whatever, then that allows you to have a structure that also has algebraic properties. Or am I saying that at all right?
Yes.
And then because it has certain algebraic properties, um, you could do certain things that you couldn't do otherwise with it. There's maybe optimizations that you could make on how you run it or something like that. Is that?
Yeah, there are optimizations. I haven't looked at them closely because I know that recursion schemes anyway, they're kind of slow. So if you're doing big data or something like that, like data intensive applications, then you probably can't use them. So I tried to do the following at my client's project. So they had this is a mobile carrier, doesn't matter which one. So they have towers with the data, and the data is written in very old ACP, ASBN one format or something. Um, and we have a big cluster of microservices where we're talking about like Kafka, whatever, Spark, and everything in that. And they are talking to each other, sending like protobufs, and you need to convert the old format to that protobuf and like use schema and whatever. And this is the perfect use case for recursion schemes, because instead of writing manually A goes to A, B goes to B, you should generate that dynamically using recursion schemes like naming and everything. So I was trying to do that, but the problem was that this is mobile carrier and it's a large amount of data, and they need something like 5 million transactions per second.
That's a lot.
Yes, that's huge. One of the biggest projects in terms of load that I was working on, except probably Expedia, where I was working on payment system, and that was bigger than that.
Huh.
So it didn't show. I mean, although it was so elegant, as always with category theory, like just a few lines of code and everything is like debuggable, and you can look at the like tests and they would look wonderful too, because you don't have to test this recursion part. You just test the very simple unit tests, or like property-based testing would work on that side, but it was so slow.
Interesting.
Yes. So I wouldn't recommend that. But as an
but it theoretically it should be possible to find ways to make it perform. And maybe, I don't know if that's language or VM level stuff or whatever. I just watched a talk from Alexander from what's the name of the SQL library that he took over that I love, and I'm spacing on the name of it. But anyways, he did the type class derivation.
Oh no!
Talk.
What type class derivation talk?
Yeah. So he did this talk on type class derivation. Yeah.
Is it Quill?
Quill. Yes. Thank you. Quill. So he did this talk on type class derivation, and he went through the talk, and he's like, the usual thinking is that to have performance around a serializer, we need to use mutability and, add things to a map. And he's measuring the performance of doing that. And he's like, okay, so we're able to use type class derivation and get pretty similar performance, but we're still writing to a map. And then he was like, and just to see how it'd be different, I tried the immutable approach to this, and it actually was faster. And he's like, I don't know why or how it's faster, because what you've always been told is that the elegant way, the immutable way, is going to be slower, but somehow through some optimization that the compiler was doing or something, it was actually faster to do it the elegant, immutable way.
And his initial examples, the immutable way was significantly slower.
That's right. Yeah.
So, what changed?
Yeah.
I only got probably a quarter of the way through that talk before it lost me completely.
I mean, he's brilliant for sure. And a lot of it was on like some deep metaprogramming stuff, but it was cool that the crescendo of the talk, like, and you can do it the elegant way and not sacrifice the performance. But even he didn't understand why the immutable way was faster.
Just intuitively, though, it seems like the immutable approach would be faster, because you're not, just when you're dealing with concurrency, you don't have to lock things, for example. So wouldn't that make it faster? And it just seems to me that immutability is going to be a faster approach.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about it to.
We've just always been told that it's slower, but
that doesn't,
one of those underlying assumptions that
I mean, because of the creation and
the allocation,
creation of the objects and allocation,
all the heap, all the like agitation on the heap.
But then when you're able to take slices, you don't have to recreate things.
Yeah.
So
yes,
it seems
that's
like
true.
That would speed things up. It just seems like there's a lot of things that, without being told, my guess was that it was faster. So I don't know why I was wrong.
Yeah. I remember there was a related discussion, and this actually relates to the recursion one, where one of the arguments that you often hear against functional programming is, oh, like quicksort is so slow in functional programming. And that's something that I've heard as an argument many times. And then just recently I saw somebody actually be like, actually it's not. Like, and they had some actual examples to show where you can program quicksort functionally and not take a huge performance hit versus the mutable approaches. And
It's just
yeah,
allomorphism.
I don't know what that is, but awesome.
Yeah, I've written all popular sortings using recursion schemes, actually. All this
Nice.
insertion sort, merge sort, quick sort. That was my home exercise. I gave a talk about that too.
Wow.
I'm not sure it's
Was that all in Haskell or Scala or something else?
no, Scala.
Oh, nice.
Scala.
Awesome.
I had a long flight from Seattle, where I'm based, to Belarus, and while I was flying, I was writing the code with like all these sortings. So
That's
that was
awesome.
fun.
I miss those long flights where I can get that kind of work done. I mean, not that kind of work because I'm not that smart, but but projects like that, projects that are great for an airplane. I would always have my list of airplane projects that I would work on.
So I have two topics that I want to talk about with you, and one is your online conference thing, because I've been experimenting with conference organization for 20 years or something, at least 20 years. And way early, I was doing these experiments with Martin Fowler, and we would try different things. I mean, mostly Martin would come up with new ideas and we would try them. And we eventually found open spaces. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So it's a self-organizing conference system. And we've sort of been tuning that. And that, for me anyway, works really well. And the people who come to the conference work really well. And I don't know if you're familiar with that or if you've ever experienced anything like that. Okay, you haven't. All right. So, well, that was going to be my question was, have you thought of doing that? Because we've tried to experiment with how could we move more of the open spaces idea online. And, there's some technologies that we've tried. And
tell me a little bit about that, and I'll tell you what can be done, like what we are doing similar to that.
Okay. So the conference is not organized up front. There are no speakers. It's all about conversations. And at the beginning of the conference, we put up a board with rooms and times, and people grab Post-it notes. And if there's a topic that they're interested in talking about, they put the topic down. They say who the convener is. There's a book called Open Spaces by Harrison Owen, and he describes he's basically the guy who invented it. And
so there's a foundational kind of rule, kind of there's the system for how open spaces works. But I did want to interject real quick that this is also, I've heard it called lean coffee is another name for it.
So that's a newer name that people would come up with. Yeah. I mean, the idea is that the goal is to have conversations and not to have what's called eyes forward presentations, which, you're sitting and your eyes are forward and there's one person. Or they also have it, what are the sage on the stage, I think they also say,
sage
which is the idea that, one person knows things and everybody else is absorbing things. And what we discover is that everybody, the most, inexperienced programmer has things to contribute to this. And everybody goes, oh yeah, I never thought of that. But because you're coming in looking at it with fresh eyes, you have this contribution to make. So, and then people start having conversations and it just keeps going and everybody has a great time. So it kind of ruins you for regular conferences because it's so connection oriented between people. So the The thing that we've tried to put online is the...
Oh, well, before you go there, let's talk about the rules of open spaces, because I think that helps to understand like how it works or why it works.
Right.
So you've got the grid with the times and the rooms, but the rules are really the way that it I think actually functions and is useful. So one rule is the law of 2 feet, which is that if you're ever in a session and you're
not fully engaged,
then you use your 2 feet and you walk away and go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So this creates this nice checks and balances, because if someone is dominating the conversation, oftentimes that results in people not feeling engaged. And so then everyone should leave. And this is something that took me years to be comfortable with, because it's really like you feel very rude to like walk away while someone is talking.
Yeah, and I have to cast it in the form of saying you're actually helping. Because if you're in the room and you're not engaged, you're kind of drawing the energy down. So you're damaging the conversation by being there and not being engaged. You know, I have all these arguments because people are so averse to getting up and leaving, and it's still not a
comfortable.
I mean, I think people still, it's just socially challenging to do that. So I try and do whatever I can to say, no, it's okay. You can have a better experience. Everyone has a better experience if you do this. So yeah, that's probably the law of 2 feet is probably the biggest one. Well, just feel free to, don't be bored. Don't ever be bored. And once people figure it out, then they start doing all kinds of stuff. They create new sessions. They grab people who are also bored and they go get coffee and have other conversations. And it's always this level of engagement, which is not what you experience at a regular conference.
Yeah. So what I have in my mind is that I kind of we use a software called Spatial Chat, and there are others like GatherTown and other, but we love Spatial Chat because you're represented as a dot there, and you can move your icon around, and you can join multiple groups. So if you have a grid, like literally grid on your background, then and with the banner, this is like blah blah blah. James Ward wants to talk about his favorite topic, Scala. Then you just move there and you listen to him and you participate in that conversation, or you move to another thing, to another conversation, another room, and just walk like you would do that in a real open spaces environment. So and
maybe we just haven't had the right technology.
No, I'm sure we haven't.
Yes. So, and we became an
stuff.
official distributor for this spatial chat thing. So if anyone is interested in the audience or you're interested, I'm open to talk about that and how that can be used. For example, we at our Scala Love, JLove, Haskell Love conferences, we did sponsorship booth there. And they would run, for example, JetBrains run Ask Me Anything session, demo session. Like they were talking about hiring, working at JetBrains, about their different products. And they run like, I don't know, raffles for people to get license and coupons and things like that. So that was a lot of fun, and it's different from regular Zoom experience or just watching that on Twitch because you're kind of engaged. Of course, you need to, as at offline conference, you need to go somewhere and join that conversation. You need to be like active to get the best of it. But that's true about the offline conferences too. You come to people, you grab their button and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you."
Come
Is that what we're calling them now? Offline conferences? They sound like second-class citizens.
Offline conferences.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's an offline conference. You know, it's like.
Spatial chat would be interesting.
Yeah,
interesting to try for this.
Oh yeah,
maybe we can at JLove do a open spaces like
Let's do
track
that.
or something.
Mhm.
Be a
Let's
fun
do that. Why
experiment.
not?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that I think is what I wanted to know about that. My other question, because we've been struggling with this, is James and I, along with another friend of ours, Bill, we're working on Atomic Scala 3. And
Yeah.
I, for the original Atomic Scala, I had written an atom at the very end on type classes, and
Mhm.
kind of thought that I mean the syntax has changed, and I think it's better now, but
Yeah.
I'm still I'm struggling to internalize, type classes in a way that it's just transparently obvious to me, and I haven't. Uh, we've been struggling with this, trying to come up with like what is the simplest example that you can express the value of type classes. I think it really has to start with why are we doing this? What are we achieving by using type classes? And I'm hoping that you have some insights on that.
So what first comes to mind is that, for example, you build in a library or you're using a library, and in their API they're using type classes. It's really simple for you to implement that on your type and use that library functionality. Does it
I
make
guess
sense?
that's something that
Well, what are we abstracting though? See, I mean, by separating the type class from the rest of the code, and this what keeps coming back to me is it's kind of like a compile time visitor pattern, because visitor says, oh, we've got some code over here, we've got this class hierarchy, and we'd like to be able to add new virtual functions to that, but we can't touch that hierarchy because that's from the vendor or whatever. So what the vendor
Yes.
does is they add an accept function throughout, and now you can create a new object and pass it in, and it acts as if you've added a new virtual function to that hierarchy.
Yes, that's what I was saying, but you said that more in object-oriented pattern words.
Well, right. And so I'm going, okay, that feels like that's a good starting point, but I also feel like it's not quite, it doesn't quite grasp the, often the way I describe like design patterns in general is we're trying to separate things that change from things that stay the same. So the library that you're talking about, okay, that stays the same, and the type
Yes.
class is the part that changes. But
Yes.
beyond that, it's kind of like, I mean,
Is
I'm
that is it's not enough for you? Is that
no,
what you're saying?
no, because I need
Mm.
to come up with like the simplest example that I can give people where they can look at it and go, oh, I understand that. Here's what's staying the same, and here's what's changing. I guess
I think one reason why this is so hard to unravel in a way that you can teach easily is that one of the core maybe the core value or reason for why we need type classes is because there is something that you don't control,
right,
and that is just a hard thing to like show, because what you want to do is you want to show here's this code and then here's type classes, but you've just like they're essentially like seeing the code, and so that it's really hard to express in that
you don't control
this code because you've just like showed them this code. So they're like,
Yeah.
I obviously control that code. It's right there.
I can see it and I can modify it, but I mean, you express it in the terms of, okay, I'm creating a library that I want other people to be able to easily adapt to new purposes,
Yes.
which I can't anticipate.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, but I can anticipate how, the place where that's changing. I can see that. And so I can go, okay, and again, that's kind of like what Visitor allows you to do, except that that's maybe type classes doesn't have that object-oriented hierarchy built into it.
I wonder if equality
and
would be
also it's compiler time.
Right.
Um,
Checked.
yes, so that's
right. It's determined at compile time, whereas the visitor uses a double dispatch.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, I don't know.
I wonder if equality would be a simpler use case for us.
Equality?
Yeah, like making it so you could say bird equals pasta, kind of thing. Because doesn't the Scala 3 has some way to like turn on type class based equality, doesn't it?
I'm not sure. No, I don't remember.
There's something in Scala 3 where they tried to get rid of so right now in Java, you can say any type equals any other type, and that code compiles.
Mm-hmm.
And this is bad and leads to a lot of potential bugs because
it relies on objects equal, which is just defaults to.
Yeah, it's like you have no compile feedback that says you really shouldn't be comparing these two things.
Yeah.
And so Scala 3, I don't think it's on by default, but I think there's a way to like turn off that ability to do equals on any unrelated things. And so the way that you actually can compare unrelated things when you turn this off is you have to have a type class that can do an equality comparison between type A and type B.
And it knows at compile time. So
you have to have a type class there.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that type class, then you get a compiler that says, hey, you can't compare A and B. They're unrelated.
And that's not really bound to a hierarchy.
Right.
Okay. Well, and Bill mentioned that there's something to do with type conversion that's built into Scala, and it might even be doing that kind of thing. And maybe it was comparison. I don't know, but I thought it was, so my thought was, maybe we could do something silly like make a type class that would allow us to convert a double into a Boolean or a char or something, which normally you wouldn't do, but we could do it as a demonstration.
Yeah.
I don't know if does that sound possible? Have you looked into Scala 3 enough to know whether that is something we can do, where they might have
define a type class.
Type classes built in.
Oh, but is that type class built in? No.
Oh,
not for that conversion.
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I looked at some point, but then everything changed.
Yeah.
Because they keep changing even the syntax, so I'm not sure at all.
Yeah.
I would rather have them change things at the last second when they realize, this isn't going to work, than say, oh no, we already decided that we can't change it, because then you're stuck with it forever. And I've lived too long with languages that are like that. Java.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
We made a random decision in 1997 because we were in a hurry, and now you guys have to live with it forever.
But we were thinking about like when it comes to the first release candidate, should you actually add new features like imports that they added?
Import syntax,
Yeah. Or should you stuck to whatever you have and try to, debug it through and see at issues and everything starting from release candidate 1? So the discussion that we had at my Russian Scala podcast was more what to expect from milestones, from release candidates, from candidates, and what should be the rules, because that was unexpected that they would add new syntax right before the release candidate.
I would say it depends on how robust your test framework is. Because I've had this experience just in the last few days where I'm about to release an update to a book, and as I'm reviewing it, I discover something and I go, oh no, I wouldn't want to put that out, and I'm able to change it, and incorporate it because my test system is robust enough that it'll find problems. And I don't know how you do that with the language other than having a huge regression
They
test suite.
they have a community built
Mm-hmm.
uh, and do that with community builds. So different libraries like Zero, Cats, whatever type level libraries and
The
etc.
community,
are.
yeah, that community
Yep.
build system is actually pretty amazing. I don't. Have you seen that?
No.
Maybe Ollie can tell us more about it because I only know a little bit.
So the idea is simple. You have your libraries, and you know for sure that there can be compiled or should be. You should be able to compile them, and you just test your compiler against them. And there are nightly builds, so they do that every day. And while the library is updating, they also check the compile time. So,
Yeah.
and it's a big code base.
Yeah, so they're testing, I don't know, 1,000 community projects or something at this point.
Something.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so every night they run this test to validate that the the nightly Scala compiler
Okay.
build still works
that's
against.
pretty robust. And see, the other thing is the depth of the feature. Like changing from underscore to star, I would say, well, that's pretty benign in general. That's not going to be like, I don't know, something you do with generics where the
Yeah,
implications might not be seen. Yeah,
yeah.
and I guess
It's
ultimately
like how much effort is it going to be for people to update?
well, that and are there second and third level implications? And so
Right.
something like just a really basic syntax change. And I guess ultimately, Martin looks at that and goes, this is small enough, it could be fine. And I have to say, it made me happy because I'm coming from languages where that's what star means. And so underscore seems like an aberration. It's like, yeah, I just rather, I think it is beneficial to not arbitrarily make something different just for the heck of it. And so, I think the overloading, that was one of the problems that Scala has had in the past, is overloading things. And so, underscore means,
Everything.
underscore means too many things. And so I like that they're trying to undo that a bit in this.
Yeah, same
So,
with implicits, right? They're trying
mhm.
to drop
Yep.
that down into the extension methods, type classes, etc., etc.
Right. Because it's for me, it's hard to deal with the overloading of keywords. And we learned this in C++ because I was on the standards committee for the first 8 years. And initially, we wanted to keep, or we, Strustrup and some other folks wanted to keep the language what they called small, and they were doing that by overloading keywords. And I think pretty quickly they realized that that's not, if it's a different concept, you should have a different word for it.
Yeah, I was thinking about like Java fresh releases, including 16s with records and a lot of new keywords actually, and how they working on implementing that so that the previous code would work with, because back compatibility is very important for Java, right? So, and it would understand that from the context that in that case record is because something like type class or given might be a word that you use for naming your variables in the code, but it's not super popular. But record, come on.
Yeah,
What do you do when you get records from database? You call them
Call it a
records.
record.
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm a little disappointed that they didn't just call it like a data class or something. I'm not
Yeah.
sure why they didn't, because that seems at least a little more unique or meaningful. And that's, I complain a little bit about that with Scala too, calling it a case class what's the case. Whereas a data class, like you in Kotlin, it's like, oh, it's a class for data.
Product.
Mhm. Yeah, something like that.
Yep, it's a product.
Data class sounds good to me.
Yeah, data class is good. I want to switch gears back to some of the stuff you've been doing around virtual conferences and your podcasts. It seems like a lot of what you do is building community through those ways. Just tell us a little more about your podcasts first, and your. I guess you talked a little bit about your conferences, but you now have a company where you're running virtual conferences. But yeah, tell us more about your podcast and your virtual conferences.
Yeah, which one? I have 5 podcasts.
Yeah, tell us about all of them. 5
So
podcasts,
I have
five virtual conferences, one per. Is
yeah,
that how it goes?
yeah. So I have 2 Russian podcasts, one about Scala, and actually this is how I started my podcasting journey. I joined Scala podcast in Russian. It's called Scala Las, which means a rock climber in Russian, because Scala is a rock in Russian. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fun. I didn't know that Scala meant rock in Russian.
Yeah. So we're rock.
That's awesome.
Yes. And another one we're just talking to about IT in general. It's pretty new one, and it's called New Podcast to Final Doc. Something like that. We change name, but it's New Podcast to.
Nice.
You know how you would name a file. And
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
have a Scala Love podcast where I interview people from Scala World about everything related to Scala and about their lives in general. And James was a guest there. Also,
That was
I
really
have
fun.
a new one, Programming Love, and I just had wonderful, wonderful guest. James again was the first guest on that podcast.
Oh, but you
Yeah,
also had Scott Hanselman on, right?
Scott Hanselman, Kelsey
Yeah.
Hightower.
And Kelsey Hightower. Yeah.
Yes. So Charity Majors is the next one, and I'm
nice.
recording her on the International Women's Day
Nice.
on Monday. So
That's awesome.
that's gonna be fun. So the idea is to build community and to not only interview people and ask them about technology, because you can easily find the information about them on their blog post, on their own podcast. If you talk about Scott Hanselman, right? He made 800 episodes.
800 episodes. That's
Over how
amazing.
many years?
Forever. He
Forever.
keeps saying he's old. I don't think he's old, but he's saying that. So over like 10 more. Basically, he does it every week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're getting close to that with your 5 podcasts now.
Yeah.
To 800 episodes.
I guess so. And the idea is that I want to talk about personality as well a little bit, about like things, pains and joys that like people are experiencing along their way and what we can learn about them. So I always ask people about like how you go through the pandemic, because it bothers everyone, and I want to show the people that you're actual human being and not just this voice on YouTube with the like fancy camera, fancy pants, whatever.
Yeah,
so and
cool.
I have like my email always, it's oli@confi.care. Confi.care is the name of my company. Always open for suggestions for guests, for topics that we could discuss. Actually, yesterday I received my first email about Programming Laugh. Someone wanted to be a guest, so I invited them, and that would be super cool. We're going to talk about Kubernetes. I don't know a lot about Kubernetes, actually, to be honest. I used that like twice in production, and I never built a system from scratch with Kubernetes. So I'm excited to learn things about that. And
Fun.
my company, it's called Configure, and we run lovely conferences. They call usually something Love, Data Love, Scala Love, Haskell Love, J Love. Because, it's probably, I was hurt a little bit by Scala community drama because it pops up from time to time. And I actually feel like I'm so sensitive to things like that. I'm like, oh my God, guys, can we just be nice, and can we be excited about technology and not be excited about like fightings and all of that? And I was like, I want to start podcast or like a conference where everyone is friendly and we have like networking. So the most important part of my conference, of course, technical content, but you can get that on YouTube too or on the blogs. But networking is what I care about and what I like. For example, we have volunteers working and introducing speakers during our conference, and that's not because we yes, part of it is that we're a smaller company and we don't have enough people on one hand. On another hand, what we really want is to share the conference with others and have people from the field who would come and introduce that speaker. And speakers, like, we always have open CVP. Sometimes we invite people, but most of the time it's like CVP running process where we have blind CVP and we choose based on the talk, not based on the like
Person,
person.
credentials.
Do you know Bill Venners?
Yeah, of course. He started a tradition, and together with Martin Andersky, they presented both last year at Scala Love, and they continue continuation of their previous talks on this uh, 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 during this edition, 2021. So yeah, but
Well, Bill, I mean, we've been friends for 20 years at least, probably longer. Anyway, he reached out to me at one point several years ago, and he was going, I want to talk to somebody in the Python community about how they make their community so friendly. He was really wanting to, work on, because I think all of us have had that experience with the, shall we say, prickliness that
yeah,
can exist in the Scala community. It's not everywhere, obviously, but it's enough that it can turn you off a
yeah.
bit.
I think I have a little insight why he did that. He was or is, I'm not sure about now because I stepped down as a representative at advisory board. So there is Scala Center. It's a foundation where companies like donate something and they recommend Scala Center to go certain directions. But it's just a recommendation. But Scala Center is building a lot of tools, including the tools about for migration to Scala 3. It's very important projects, etc. So he was a community representative there, which means that he would gather feedback about certain things that Scala Center is doing and share that with the board. And we would decide, when I was there, we would decide like what conclusions we should make based on that. And since there was a lot of drama, not a lot of, but some portion, some people were fighting over Twitter against each other, and he did a research about how different communities work inside, like Python, Rust community, I think, and others. So, but I then I stepped down, and I'm not sure if Bill is still doing that, but I think it was part of his research.
That makes sense.
That's cool. Well, it seems like generally the Scala community has gotten much more friendly than it was in the past, and I think that part of your mission to get people together and have them learn and be nice to each other is, I think, changing the tone of the community. And I'm certainly
Oh, thank
appreciative
you.
of you doing that and all the work you put in to it's a cultural issue, right? And how do you change
Yeah.
culture but to like do it differently?
Well, and I wonder, since it seems like a lot of your conferences, people are meeting for the first time online. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, and see what we have with the like with the Winter Tech Forum, which used to be the Java Posse Roundup, is people meet for the first time in person, and so on the like the Slack channel afterwards, that's always, you can tell everybody knows each other, and they have this connection from being at the conference, often many conferences, and so they all treat each other with, I mean, there's never any disrespect that I've ever
Hmm.
seen. And so I wonder how you look at, you know,
It's got to be a lot harder in the virtual.
well, it always is. I mean, because, you have people who are used to playing games and being mean to each other and stuff like that. And to change that perspective when you're not face to face
Yeah.
seems like it would be challenging.
So what I do, like I just talk about comfort of everyone, like privately. Then I create a Slack channel before the conference where I invite all speakers and all attendees, and I try to engage them before the conference, prior to the conference, so that they would know. Like if someone tweeted something interesting, I would post that or tag someone, just say hi. And things like that. So I'm trying to be proactive and engage people before the conference. But so far, nobody was mean. But also, I'm just trying to be nice to people, and they're usually nice to me too.
Be the change,
Yeah.
huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know in the Python community, it was always, I mean, he led this way, and everybody who became part of the core development team all kind of fit that mold because there were people that he wanted to work
Yeah.
with. And, it sort of spreads that way. But I think once it became embedded in the culture, then it becomes self sustaining. But to get it embedded, I don't know. I guess I look at it in terms of, well, what sort of structure can we put in place so that it perpetuates automatically rather than you're doing it using your own personality, and
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
which is great, but I'm always looking for structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By,
You
by
want
the
you
way,
want
I invited.
control over culture.
By the way, I invited
No.
Guido to Data Love, and he said no. Damn.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I know him. That's actually a good sign for him because he tends to try and do too many things, and so the fact that he's saying no is great. I
Okay.
mean, I'm back here applauding. It's going, yes, you need to say no more. I need to say no more. We all do.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, what challenges have you seen with building community and trying to a be the change of making the Scala community nicer?
So, right now, once it's my full-time job, basically, it's actually easier because I can be more like I have more time to answer emails because sometimes people would just email me like and ask, "How do I start learning Scala? What resources should I look at?" and etc. etc. And it just matter of time, I guess. I don't expect people to mm, like become nicer to each other instantly.
Hmm.
So it's hard work in terms of like how you think about like let's gather together in Clubhouse because it's a new fancy app or something, or create like let's talk about this or in the podcast, let's run a poll, let's do that. But I have time for my ideas to implement them. So the challenge is just the time, and I think if everyone had more time, they actually would become nicer, because sometimes they just write something really fast, and it it may come across as not as nice, but it's not because the person is mean, but just because they don't have enough time to answer
They
it
just
properly.
rushed.
Yes,
One of
rushed.
I take this nonviolent communication workshop on Friday afternoons, and one of the things that the leader is always saying, and it takes me by surprise every time it happens, is she goes, "Okay, we're trying to go too fast here. Let's slow down." And then she'll focus on something that you realize, oh, that's the important thing. And so that slowing down, and once you realize that we have this impulse to always hurry and get things done
Yeah.
quickly, and because capitalism has to move forward or whatever. And then when you start looking at it and going, oh, if I slow down and just, take that schedule away and just focus on the thing, then we actually shift something. We actually accomplish something. And so I'm trying to internalize that slowing down in my own world.
Yes, that's exactly my thoughts too. When you're not rushed, you can think it through more carefully, and maybe something will pop up in your mind, and you will think of how you are perceived by others.
Yeah. That takes time and energy.
But we're in a hurry. We're always in a hurry.
Yes, exactly.
That's cool. Well, that was delightful.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have anything else we want to chat about? Ollie, Bruce?
No, I think I'm complete.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
No, I wanted to say something that I've started to learn Java as a student, and the first book I read on Java was Thinking in Java.
Oh,
that's awesome. Same for me. Same is true for me. Yeah. Actually, I don't think it was the first one.
Thank you so much.
For me, I read the Deedle and Deedle one first, because that was the curriculum at school.
Right.
But then I didn't understand object-oriented programming, and I had a Java e-commerce app that was one class file and like 3,000 lines long, and because I wrote it like I wrote my Perl.
Yep.
And so then I read your book, and then I learned OO, and it was changed everything.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I've read that in Russian because I didn't know English at the time, and it's called Philosophy of Java, actually, if you translate that.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow, the philosophy of Java. Boy, that's a heavy mantle to wear.
Yeah,
I like that though. I don't know if I could ever name a book like that in English, because that says that's
too bold.
Yeah, it's way too bold.
Aren't you the Aristotle of Scala?
So
rename atomic Scala.
I took philosophy classes in college, and they all just seemed pointless and miserable to me. So I wouldn't want to say that, but it sounds great.
It sounds great. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ollie. So good to be with you and have you on, and appreciate your time and appreciate all you do for the community and helping developers learn and come together and connect.
Thank you so much. It was fun to be here, and I hope to, have Bruce at my podcast too. And I keep repeating that, but unfortunately my schedule is so crazy and people pop up from time to time, but we will do that.
There's no hurry.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ollie.
Right.